Picture this, right? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. The house is completely silent, the lights are totally off, and you're suddenly jolted awake by the sound of little footsteps. You look up, and there's your child, wide-eyed, absolutely terrified, and convinced that an intruder is lurking just outside their bedroom door. If you're a caregiver who has actually lived through this, you know exactly how exhausting and honestly genuinely terrifying this can be for both of you. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to act as nighttime detectives. We're going to unpack the science and the psychology behind this super common childhood fear. But more importantly, we're going to give you the exact tools you need to solve it so that, everyone can finally get some sleep. It's a really fascinating question, isn't it? Have you ever noticed that these invisible intruders almost never seem to bother your child at, say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon while they're happily playing in the sunny living room? It literally always happens at night. I really want you to put yourself right in that quiet, dark house, but from your child's perspective. When the lights finally go out, all the distractions of the day just vanish. Suddenly, a child is left entirely alone in the quiet with absolutely nothing but their own thoughts. In the absence of visual info, like seeing their familiar toys or the general safety of their room, their imagination completely takes over. And when a child is gripped by the perception of a threat in that kind of sensory void, wow, that perception feels incredibly, undeniably real to them.
Section 1. The Midnight Bad Guy Fear.
Okay, let's dive into this. It definitely helps to know right off the bat that going through a phase of fearing robbers, intruders, or bad guys is completely normal from a developmental standpoint. It's actually a sign that your child's brain is starting to understand the whole concept of external threats. But, just because it's normal doesn't mean it isn't highly disruptive to your family's routine. To fix it, we first have to understand exactly what we're dealing with. And this brings us to a really critical realization. When your child is terrified of an intruder, it's almost certainly not because they've ever actually encountered one in real life. This fear is almost exclusively fueled by external information the child has absorbed, rather than direct real-world experience. They haven't lived through a break-in, right? But they have captured the idea of one, and that idea has taken root in their mind, growing into this monster that literally only comes out when the sun goes down.
Section 2. Where the fear originates.
So where exactly do these ideas even come from? Well, we have to remember how a child's brain actually works. Younger kids simply cannot fully contextualize risk yet. When an adult hears about a danger, our adult brains instantly process the context, the location, and the actual statistical probability of that danger affecting us. A child's brain just doesn't have that filter yet. They take in the scary information, and without the ability to contextualize it, they internalize it as an immediate, highly personal threat. Now, the research on children's fright reactions to mass media points to several major drivers. Obviously, frightening TV shows and scary online content are the usual culprits. But honestly, it's those more passive elements that totally sneak up on us. Things like background news broadcasts and overheard adult conversations. A child doesn't need to be sitting directly in front of the television actively watching to be affected. Passively overheard information like a news anchor talking about local crime, or even you casually listening to a true crime podcast while chopping onions for dinner, acts as a massive driver for these really durable nighttime fears. They catch fragments of danger and their imagination just fills in the terrifying blanks. Section 3. The brain's scary trick. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is understanding exactly what the child's brain is doing with that information. The brain is actually playing a bit of a scary trick on them. It's taking the media they've absorbed and basically weaponizing it against their own peace of mind. Here's the psychology behind this little cognitive glitch. It's all about how a child's mind prioritizes information. Because a child has overheard a scary news story or caught a glimpse of a frightening show, they now possess this vivid, terrifying mental picture of an intruder. That mental image is highly available in their brain, as psychologists call it. When they're lying there in the dark, that vivid picture completely overrides logic. They end up vastly overestimating this incredibly rare danger, simply because the image of it is so bright and terrifying in their mind's eye. The vividness of the image entirely outweighs the actual real-world probability of it ever happening. And this dynamic creates a massive imbalance. On one hand, this rare, vivid danger acts like a giant flashing red light in their mind, right? It demands all of their attention and becomes the absolute focus of their fear. Meanwhile, the actual low base rate, the factual reality of being in a locked, incredibly safe house, shrinks down to this tiny, almost invisible shield. Because the child is underweighting how safe they actually are, that logical reality practically disappears. The scary imagery simply feels way too present and way too real for logic to break through on its own. Section 4. Your action plan.
Okay, so how do we actually fix this cognitive glitch? How do we help our kids recalibrate their brains so everyone can actually get some rest? We're going to shift gears right now into some empowering, really concrete solutions that you can implement tonight. The absolute first and most powerful tool is establishing a bedtime safety ritual. While digging into the research for this explainer, I found this incredible aha moment regarding how to execute this. The secret sauce here? This must be a child-led routine. You aren't just doing this for them, they are doing it with you. Step 1, have them physically check the lock on their door, or even the front door with you. Step 2, have them turn on their own nightlight. Step 3, verbally confirm the perimeter by having them hear you say, "Grown-ups are right here." Having the child actively run these steps is absolutely brilliant because it converts their paralyzing feeling of helplessness into active agency. They aren't just passively hoping they're safe, they are actively securing their environment. It's a real game changer.
Our next tactical step is environmental management, and this one is crucial. You've got to cut scary media near bedtime and, frankly, for young children in general. If we know for sure that their brains are latching onto these vivid dangers and totally struggling to contextualize them, we have to stop supplying the raw material for those nightmares. This means turning off the evening news, pausing those true crime podcasts, and being highly aware of any adult conversations happening within earshot as bedtime approaches. As a caregiver, you have a really clear mandate here. You must protect the peace of the evening environment. By doing so, you're making sure their brain doesn't have a fresh, scary image to obsess over when the lights finally go out.
Section 5, the biggest reassurance mistake. Even with a great routine and solid media management, your child might still call out for you in the middle of the night. How you respond in that exact moment is critical. We need to find what we call the Goldilocks framing, the just right middle path of comfort. It is so tempting, especially when you are absolutely exhausted, to just dismiss the fear. You might say something like, "Oh, don't be silly, nothing's going to happen, just go to sleep." But doing this completely invalidates the child's very real feelings of terror, pretty much leaving them totally alone with their fear. On the exact opposite extreme is over-reassuring. This is when you do an elaborate 20-minute sweep of the house, checking under every single bed and inside every closet every single night. The problem here is that this massive production actually confirms to the child that the threat is real and absolutely worth all of this intense vigilance. Both of these extremes ultimately just make the fear worse.
So the crucial point is finding that middle path, which we define as facts plus a plan. You want to aim for an honest, calming perspective. You validate their feeling, absolutely, but you calmly state the facts. These events are incredibly rare. Then, you immediately pair that fact with the concrete safety plan your family already relies on. You say, "It is very safe here. The doors are locked, and the grown-ups are right down the hall." You execute your brief, confident safety routine, and then, and this is the key part, you move on. You don't linger in the fear, you lead them right back to safety.
Section 6, when to seek help.
Of course, as caregivers, we always need to know where the boundary line is, right? Most of the time, the tools we just discussed will effectively resolve this totally normal developmental phase. But it's super important to establish a clear safety line for when you might be dealing with something just a bit more complex. Here are a few signals that indicate it might be time to seek professional support. Look out for if the fear is incredibly intense, if it's generalized to other areas of life, and if it's actively impairing your child's daily functioning. Also, if they absolutely refuse to sleep alone for weeks on end. If they're exhibiting genuine panic symptoms like hyperventilating, or if they're engaging in constant, obsessive safety checking completely on their own. These signs might point to an underlying anxiety disorder, or perhaps even a real unspoken safety concern in their life. Remember, as parents, our job is just to observe and support, never to diagnose it ourselves. If you see these red flags, simply reach out to a pediatric mental health professional for some guidance.
Let's wrap up our time together today with this final, really vital question. I want you to think back over your day. What background media, what quick news update on your phone, or what passing conversation with a neighbor did your child overhear today that might just visit them tonight when the lights go out? By taking control of the media environment and implementing a confident child-led safety routine, you really can stop the bad guys at the door and bring peaceful, restful nights back to your home. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, here's to a quiet night for everyone.